Zeus stood atop Mount Olympus, his gaze fixed on the mortal realm below. Something had caught his attention, a crumbling temple nestled in a forgotten valley. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, yet it tugged at the edges of his immortal mind. As he drew closer, memories stirred within him like leaves caught in a forgotten breeze. The temple's architecture bore the hallmarks of the Golden Age, when his reign was young and the world still trembled from the aftermath of the Titanomachy. But something was off. The pillars, though weathered, carried engravings that spoke of divine blessing, his blessing. Yet the ceremonies they depicted were foreign to him. He descended from the heavens, his feet landing on the weathered stone steps. The temple's walls were adorned with faded murals, their colors dulled by centuries of neglect. But it was the central figure in these paintings that made even the king of gods pause. A goddess, radiating gentle power, her face both familiar and unknown. At the heart of the temple stood an altar, and there, carved deep into the ancient stone, was his own symbol, the lightning bolt. Zeus traced the marking with his finger, feeling the spark of his divine energy, yet no memory surfaced of blessing this sanctuary. "Father," Athena's voice echoed through the chamber. The goddess of wisdom appeared, her gray eyes scanning the murals with sharp focus. "These shouldn't exist." Athena moved through the chamber with practiced grace, her fingers trailing along the inscriptions. Each symbol she touched glowed faintly with residual divine energy. "These markings, they're written in the old tongue, from before we established the Olympian order. But look here." She pointed to a series of intricate symbols. "These were added later, during your reign. They speak of healing rituals, of memories restored and wounds mended, powers that none of us possess." Her gaze fell upon a section where the paint had nearly faded. With a wave of her hand, divine light illuminated what time had almost erased. Figures kneeling before the mysterious goddess, their wounds healing under her touch. But what caught Athena's attention was the date inscribed beneath. It was from the early days of Zeus's reign, yet she had no memory of such events. As the goddess of wisdom and strategy, Athena prided herself on knowing every detail of Olympian history. This gap in her knowledge felt like a personal affront. "What do you mean?" Zeus demanded, though uncertainty crept into his voice. Athena pulled a scroll from her robes. "I've been researching our histories. There are inconsistencies. References to a lady of whispers appear in fragments, only to vanish in later records. It's as if someone deliberately erased her from our memory." Zeus's expression darkened. "Impossible. I would remember blessing a new goddess." Thunder rumbled overhead, reflecting his growing unease. The foundations of Olympus were built on Zeus's authority, his unshakable memory of triumph over the Titans and the divine order he had established. To admit a gap in that memory was to admit weakness, something the king of gods had never done. "Would you?" Athena's question lingered in the air like gathering storm clouds. "Or would you remember only what you choose to remember?" Before Zeus could respond, a sudden gust of wind announced Hermes' arrival. The messenger god's usual mischievous grin was absent, replaced by an uncharacteristic gravity. "You need to see this," he said, holding out an ancient urn. Its surface was etched with shifting symbols, as though the carvings themselves were alive. "I found it in the restricted archives. It hums with magic we haven't felt in eons." Athena stepped closer, her sharp eyes tracing the intricate patterns that seemed to writhe and change like memories struggling to break free. She recognized fragments of ancient spells woven into its design, magic older than the Titans. Some symbols resembled those used in healing rituals, while others warned of dire consequences if the seal were broken. Most troubling were the marks that spoke of divine essence, trapped and contained within. The three gods gathered around the urn, its surface pulsing with a forbidden energy that made even Zeus take a step back. "Breaking the seal could unleash forces we can't control," he warned, his voice tight. The urn rippled like liquid metal, responding to their divine presence. Whispers, ancient and faint, escaped from its sealed edges, speaking in languages long dead to gods and mortals alike. Hermes shifted uneasily, his winged sandals hovering slightly above the ground as if ready to flee. "There's more," he said, pointing to markings near the base. "These symbols, they're like the ones in Hades' realm, used to bind immortal souls. Whatever's in here wasn't just hidden, it was imprisoned. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Zeus's lightning bolt materialized in his hand, crackling with restless energy. The king of gods had faced countless threats, monsters, titans, even fellow gods, but never had he confronted an enemy as insidious as doubt. His own memories, once as solid as Olympian marble, now felt as fragile as mortal dreams. Or it could reveal truths we've chosen to forget. Athena countered. This goddess, her existence threatens everything we believe about our own history. How many other memories have we lost or buried? The wisdom goddess ran her fingers along the temple walls, feeling the pulse of ancient power beneath the stone. Each touch revealed fleeting images, a grand ceremony on Olympus, celebrations in mortal cities, and, most disturbingly, a terrible conflict that ended in divine light and darkness. These weren't mere paintings. They were memories preserved in stone, waiting to be awakened. Hermes weighed the urn in his hands, his expression unreadable. Sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones we keep from ourselves. Athena knelt beside a fallen column, her fingers brushing away layers of dust to reveal inscriptions etched into the stone. These weren't the formal decrees of gods, but the desperate pleas of those seeking healing. Names of mortals and forgotten deities, prayers for lost memories, and offerings to a figure called the Lady of Whispers. Some names belonged to minor gods who had vanished from Olympus long ago, their fates as mysterious as the goddess they once served. Zeus paced the chamber, his footsteps echoing against the ancient stone. With each step, small bursts of lightning flickered, illuminating fragments of the murals. In one flash, the goddess appeared to heal wounded immortals. In another, she stood before the gates of Olympus, her arms raised. Whether in supplication or defiance, the damage made it impossible to tell. If we open it, Athena said, her voice steady but her mind racing, we risk more than unleashing unknown magic. We risk unraveling the very foundation of Olympus. Our pantheon is built on trust in your leadership, Father. What happens when they learn even you can forget? There's something else, Hermes interjected, his usual playful tone replaced by uncharacteristic gravity. He pointed to the temple's ceiling, where constellations were carved into the stone. These star patterns, they're wrong. Or rather, they're right, but not for our time. They show the sky as it appeared during the Titanomachy, but with one crucial difference. He gestured to a cluster of stars shaped like a chalice. This constellation doesn't exist anymore. It's as if someone didn't just erase this goddess from Earth and Olympus. They erased her from the heavens themselves. The air grew heavy with tension as Zeus looked between his children and the artifact. The king of gods had ruled through absolute authority, but now, faced with a past he couldn't remember, that authority began to crack like the temple walls around them. The library of Olympus loomed ahead, its crystal spires piercing the divine sky. At its entrance, the three fates sat weaving their eternal tapestry, their ancient eyes tracking every movement with suspicion. The marble floors echoed with the trio's footsteps as they approached, each step resonating with divine power. Athena's gaze lingered on the tapestry, threads of gold and silver intertwined with the lives of mortals and gods. But something was off. Certain threads had been cut and rewoven, leaving faint gaps in the fabric of history. "Leave this to me," Hermes whispered, a mischievous glint returning to his eyes. He stepped forward with an exaggerated bow, ready to charm the fates with his silver tongue. "O wise ones, I bring grave news of a prophecy. A golden ram has appeared in the mortal realm, just as it did in the age of Phrixus," Hermes declared, his voice dripping with theatrical urgency. As the fates leaned in, captivated by his tale, Zeus seized the moment. He strode toward the library entrance, his presence commanding the air itself. The librarian, a minor deity named Episteme, nearly fumbled her scrolls at the sight of him. "My lord," she stammered, "the restricted sections are open to me." Zeus interrupted, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Or have you forgotten who built this library?" Athena observed the exchange in silence, her sharp eyes catching the flicker of uncertainty beneath her father's authority. The trio ventured deeper into the labyrinthine shelves, where ancient texts seemed to writhe on their parchment, their letters squirming as if alive. The air grew heavy with the scent of old magic, and scrolls floated between shelves, as if guided by unseen hands. Ghostly whispers echoed from texts that hadn't been touched in millennia. Zeus reached for a volume, only for it to crumble into dust at his touch. His jaw tightened, and Athena sensed his unease. The truth they sought seemed to fight back, as if Olympus itself conspired to keep its secrets. The deeper they went, the more the library resisted. Ancient wards flickered to life, sending shivers down their spines. Athena noticed the scars of violence, scorch marks and claw, like scratches marring some shelves, while others remained untouched. Whatever lay hidden here had been both protected and attacked countless times. "Here," Athena said, unrolling a scroll that pulsed with the same energy as the urn. "Anesidora, she who sends gifts, a goddess of memory and healing." During the Titanomachy, Hermes read over her shoulder. She opposed Zeus's rule. He shot a nervous glance at his father. Zeus's face paled. "That's impossible. Every deity chose sides in that war. I remember them all, but the temples." Athena pressed, pulling out another scroll. "Look at these plans." Her sanctuaries were systematically destroyed, their foundations erased. This wasn't just war, father. This was deliberate elimination. Her finger traced a faded diagram. "And here, her symbol intertwined with yours. You didn't just know her. You worked with her." Zeus's expression shifted. Confusion, then something darker, almost like guilt. The air crackled with tension, and distant thunder rolled across Olympus. Lightning flickered in his eyes as fragments of memory threatened to surface. His fingers brushed the edges of another scroll, this one bearing the seal of Olympus's earliest days. The parchment revealed glimpses of a grand temple, its walls adorned with healing symbols that merged seamlessly with Zeus's own lightning bolts. The image stirred something deep within Zeus, a flicker of betrayal, a challenge to his authority, a friendship turned to ash. "Do you?" Hera's voice sliced through the library's silence, sharp and commanding. She stepped out from between the shelves, her usual regal bearing tinged with something unfamiliar fear. "Some memories are better left buried. Husband, you know something?" Athena accused, her sharp eyes catching the faint tremor in Hera's hands. "About Anesidora." Hera's gaze darted between them, her composure cracking like fragile glass. "You don't understand what you're meddling with. Memory isn't just knowledge, it's power. The ability to heal memories means the power to destroy them, to reshape reality itself." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Think, Athena. Why would Zeus himself choose to forget? What truth could be so terrible that the king of gods would erase it from existence?" Athena's eyes caught a scroll slipping from Hera's robes, one marked with the symbol of divine marriage. For a fleeting moment, she saw an illustration of 3 figures instead of the usual 2 at the sacred ceremony. The third figure had been violently scratched out, but the faint outline of a healing staff lingered in the margin. The implications were staggering. Anesidora wasn't just another goddess. She had been present at the very foundation of Olympian power. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Hermes, usually restless, stood unnaturally still, his eyes locked on the exchange. Even the library seemed to hold its breath, as if the walls themselves feared the answer. "I know that the past can destroy the present." Hera snapped, her voice brittle. "Let her fade. Let the whispers die. Some secrets protect us all." A distant rumble shook the library, and scrolls tumbled from their shelves. Zeus caught one before it hit the ground, his eyes widening as he scanned its contents. The parchment detailed healing rituals, performed during the darkest days of the Titan War, rituals that had saved countless divine lives, including his own. The memory surfaced like a half-formed dream, gentle hands pressing against his wounds, whispered incantations knitting his divine flesh back together, and a face that refused to solidify in his mind's eye. But Athena saw through Hera's words to the truth beneath. The queen of Olympus wasn't just protecting the divine order, she was protecting herself. Whatever Anesidora knew, whatever power she held over memory, it threatened Hera's own carefully guarded secrets. The descent into the underworld felt different this time. The air grew heavier with each step, thick with the weight of forgotten things. Hades awaited them at his obsidian throne, Persephone at his side, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. The journey had already taken its toll on the trio. Zeus's usual commanding presence felt diminished in the depths of the underworld, his thunderous aura muted by the oppressive shadows. Athena's sharp, calculating eyes scanned the darkness, searching for threats that lingered just beyond sight. Even Hermes, ever the trickster with a jest always at the ready, moved with uncharacteristic caution. The weight of their mission pressed heavily upon them, as if the very stones of the underworld bore down on their shoulders. You seek passage to the hollow pantheon, Hades in tune, his voice echoing through the cavernous chamber like a death knell. A dangerous request. Hermes stepped forward, his caduceus glinting faintly in the dim light. Name your price, uncle. The Hades' gaze fell to the staff in Hermes' hand. That, he said, pointing, your symbol of power. Leave it here as collateral. As the gods negotiated, Persephone slipped silently to Athena's side. Without a word, she pressed something small and red into Athena's palm, a single pomegranate seed. Her eyes held a silent warning's assurance. Should you need it. The path to the hollow pantheon twisted through regions of the underworld that defied even divine comprehension. Here, shadows had substance, and memories took physical form. They passed through a city of ghosts, but these were no mortal souls. They were the remnants of forgotten gods. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper, carrying whispers of ancient hymns no mortal throat had sung in millennia. Hermes noticed how the ground seemed to reject their presence, each footstep sending ripples of disturbance through the ethereal landscape. Athena's usually steady hands trembled slightly as she traced the outlines of fallen statues, their features worn smooth by the erosion of collective forgetting. Temples that had once gleamed with celestial light now stood corrupted by neglect, their columns twisted into impossible shapes by the weight of abandonment. The air itself seemed to whisper with fragments of lost prayers and broken oaths. Zeus recognized some of the faces in the darkness, deities he had personally cast down, their power stripped away until only these shadowy echoes remained. Spectral figures drifted through crumbling temples, their forms flickering like dying flames. Some wore crowns of mist, others carried broken symbols of power. All turned to watch Zeus with hollow, accusing eyes. Usurper, they whispered. History, thief, your majesty. A voice called out, more substantial than the others. A group of shades materialized, and Isidora's former followers. Have you come to witness your handiwork, to see those you erased to build your perfect reign? The accusation hung in the air like poison. Hermes watched his father's face, seeing for the first time uncertainty crack through Zeus's divine mask. The king of gods had rewritten history before. They all knew it, but never had the consequences of his actions been so viscerally displayed. The forgotten ones pressed closer, their forms rippling with ancient anger. Zeus's fingers clenched and unclenched, a gesture Hermes had seen only once before, when the Titans had nearly breached Olympus's gates. The king of gods was facing an enemy he couldn't strike down with lightning or intimidate with thunder. The shades surrounding Zeus were more than mere apparitions. They were living echoes of his choices, each one a grim reminder of power wielded without mercy. Their hollow eyes bore not just accusation, but something far more damning. The unflinching truth. You built your golden age on our bones. One shade hissed, its voice heavy with the weight of centuries. Every pillar of Olympus stands on a foundation of forgotten memories. Athena stepped forward, her shield raised, positioning herself between her father and the spectral figures. We seek understanding, not conflict, she declared, though her words felt hollow in this realm where truth reigned supreme. Zeus's fingers crackled with lightning, but Athena placed a firm hand on his arm, holding him back. Before them loomed an ancient archway, its surface etched with shifting, indecipherable script. A riddle gate, Athena murmured, her sharp eyes tracing the dead language that wreathed across the stone. This is the key to an Isidora's inner sanctum. While Athena bent her mind to the puzzle, Zeus faced a relentless tide of shadow creatures, manifestations of his guilt, given form by the underworld's dark magic. Each bore the face of someone he had wronged, someone he had condemned to obscurity. With every creature struck down by his lightning, two more rose to take its place, an endless parade of his past misdeeds. One wore the face of a river goddess he had silenced for eternity. Another, the features of a dawn deity whose light he had extinguished. The king of gods fought with growing desperation, his legendary strength useless against foes forged from regret and remorse. The battle raged on, each flash of lightning illuminating the twisted spires of the forgotten realm. The shadows spoke not just in voices but in memories. Memories Zeus had tried to bury. They carried the weight of centuries, each one a testament to power abused and justice denied. In their midst, Zeus fought not only the shades but the creeping realization that his reign, for all its grandeur, was built on a foundation of silence. Among the shadow creatures, one shade stood out, a young goddess whose domain had been teaching mercy to warriors. He remembered her plea, her warning that a reign built on fear would crumble. He had silenced her with a thunderbolt, declaring mercy had no place in the age of Olympian rule. Now, her spectral form watched him with eyes that held not hatred, but pity. "You cannot strike down what you have already destroyed," the shades taunted, their voices a chorus of remembered pain. "We are your legacy, Thunderer. We are what remains when glory fades." Meanwhile, Hermes slipped away unnoticed, his nimble feet carrying him to a shattered altar. Among the ruins lay fragments of a crown, not of metal or stone, but of crystallized memory. He pocketed a shard just as Athena deciphered the riddle. "Memory endures beyond power," she translated, her voice steady. "Truth outlives thrones." The words reverberated through the chamber, shaking the very stones with their resonance. For a moment, the attacking shadows hesitated, as if bound by the power of the ancient phrase. Zeus lowered his hands, the lightning at his fingertips fading into nothingness. A flicker of understanding crossed his face, and he murmured, "Every throne is built on forgotten foundations. Every crown casts a shadow." For the first time since they had entered the Underworld, Zeus looked old, truly old. The weight of ages pressed down on his shoulders, and his divine radiance dimmed like a candle in a storm. Hermes watched, stunned. He had never seen doubt in his father's eyes before. Zeus, the unshakable ruler of the heavens, the god who had shaped the world with his will, now stood face to face with the cost of his power. The shadows swirled around them, their whispers a haunting chorus of forgotten names and broken promises. Athena's gaze met her father's, and a silent understanding passed between them. They had come too far to turn back, but the price of their quest was becoming clearer with every step. The truth they sought could shatter Olympus to its core. The journey through the hollow pantheon had changed them all. Hermes, who had always seen Zeus as an unyielding pillar of authority, now recognized the burden of maintaining that facade. Athena, despite her vast wisdom, realized how much of history remained hidden even from her. The archives of Olympus no longer seemed like a repository of truth, but a carefully curated story, with countless voices silenced between its lines. The gate before them creaked open, its sound like distant weeping, revealing the heart of the hollow pantheon. But before they could step through, the shard of Anisidor's crown in Hermes' pocket pulsed with urgent energy. Meanwhile, chaos erupted on Olympus. Apollo stood before the assembled gods, his golden bow drawn. "They seek to resurrect what we buried for good reason," he declared, his voice sharp. Artemis stood beside him, arrows nocked and ready. The natural order must be preserved. The divine assembly stirred uneasily, their immortal forms shifting like storm clouds before thunder. Dionysus, usually content to watch events unfold with wine-soaked amusement, set aside his goblet with rare sobriety. Even Ares, who thrived on conflict, seemed unsettled by the tension crackling through the celestial air. The resurrection of a forgotten goddess threatened not just their power but the very foundation of their reign. Hera rose from her throne, her peacock feathers rustling with barely contained rage. "Hermes," she called out, her voice cutting through the assembly. "Show them what you stole from my chambers." From behind her, a shimmering vial of ambrosia materialized, a perfect replica of the one Hermes was accused of taking. It was a trap, and Hermes knew it. Denial was pointless. With a quick, witted smirk, he vanished in a blur of motion, leaving only the scent of wind and wisdom behind. The hunt began in a flash, Apollo's golden arrows slicing through the air where Hermes had stood just moments before. Athena stood in Zeus's council chamber, her storm gray eyes blazing with the weight of her discovery. "Father," she said, her voice steady but laced with tension, "you speak of divine order, of necessity. But I've seen the records. Anesidora wasn't just another deity. She was your healer during the Titan War." She stepped closer, her words heavy with the truth of ancient scrolls and forgotten testimonies. "I've seen how she fought beside you, how her healing arts saved countless immortals during the war's darkest days. Without her, the Titan's poison would have claimed half our forces. Yet you erased her. Not just from Olympus, but from memory itself. What kind of threat could justify such annihilation?" Zeus's grip tightened on his thunderbolt, his knuckles white. "She was dangerous," he growled, his voice thick with regret. "Her power to heal came with the power to harm, to reach into minds, to alter memories." Lightning crackled across the chamber's ceiling as Zeus continued, his words heavy with the weight of centuries. "You weren't there, Athena. You didn't see how her healing could twist into poison, how she could reach into the deepest corners of immortal minds and reshape what she found. She claimed it was for their own good, to ease their trauma, to help them forget the horrors of war. But who was she to decide what should be remembered and what should be forgotten?" "No," Athena interrupted, her voice sharp. "She was dangerous because she remembered, because she witnessed what you did to secure your throne, and she refused to stay silent." The shard of Anesidora's crown, retrieved from the hollow pantheon, began to glow, casting flickering images onto the chamber walls. They watched as a younger Anesidora stood before an army of titans, her healing light holding back their corruption. But more than that, they saw her standing beside Zeus, not as a servant, but as an equal. The visions shimmered with divine power, showing moments lost to time. Anesidora tending to wounded gods, her touch pulling poison from their essence, her voice rising in council, speaking of balance and wisdom. And then, the darker glimpses, her witnessing Zeus's compromises, his betrayals, the deeds that paved his path to power. Each memory was a crack in the perfect facade of Olympian rule. The vision shifted to her final prophecy, spoken as Zeus raised his bolt against her. "You can shatter my form, but truth has a way of reassembling itself. I've hidden my essence in the mortal realm, where your fear of the Titans can't reach. When the time comes, Olympus will remember." The prophecy echoed through the chamber, each word shaking the very foundations of Olympus. The gods who had gathered to witness the confrontation shifted uneasily, their own memories stirring with half-forgotten doubts. Hephaestus tightened his grip on his hammer, while Aphrodite's flawless features betrayed the first traces of worry. The weight of the past hung heavy in the air, a reminder that even gods could not escape the truth forever. They all knew that divine power was built on belief as much as strength, and beliefs could crumble when truth came to light. The shard dimmed, leaving them in a silence heavy with unease. Zeus's face paled, the weight of millennia of deception etched into his immortal features. "If she returns," he murmured, his voice barely audible, "the Titans will use her knowledge against us. They'll rise again." The great hall fell silent, the implications settling over them like a suffocating fog. Athena saw the fear in her father's eyes, not fear of Anesidora herself, but of the truth she carried, the carefully crafted mythology of their rule, the stories they told themselves about their righteousness. All of it teetered on the edge of collapse. In the shadows, other gods shifted uneasily, their gazes flickering with doubt. What other secrets lay buried in Olympus's foundations? Demeter stepped forward, her harvest crown glinting in the ethereal light. "I remember her," she said softly, breaking a silence that had lasted eons. "She helped ease my grief during the first winter, when Persephone was taken. She taught us that pain and healing were two sides of the same coin." Her words hung in the air like fragile leaves, and for a moment, the assembly seemed to hold its breath. "Perhaps," Demeter continued, "it wasn't just her power that frightened us, but her understanding of our vulnerabilities." Zeus's thunderbolt crackled, its energy barely contained. "You don't understand the delicate balance we maintain," he growled. "Sometimes for the greater good, sacrifices must be made. Even memory must bow to necessity. His words rippled through the divine assembly like a shockwave. Poseidon, who had remained silent until now, stirred in his watery throne. His voice carried the depth of ocean trenches as he spoke. Brother, we've ruled through fear for too long. Perhaps it's time we learn to rule through truth instead. Or perhaps, Athena countered, her tone steady, we deserve to face what we've buried. The river Lethe stretched before them, its silver waters whispering promises of both forgetting and remembering. Beyond it lay Mnemosine's sacred pool, its surface reflecting nothing but unvarnished truth. Zeus stood at its edge, his usual confidence faltering. The air grew thick with anticipation as they approached. Even Hermes, ever the trickster, remained uncharacteristically silent. This was sacred ground, where the essence of memory itself dwelled. Ancient whispers echoed across the shoreline, carrying fragments of forgotten tales and lost secrets. To drink is to remember everything, Athena warned, holding 3 golden chalices. Every triumph, every sin, every moment we've chosen to forget. They knelt at the pool's edge, the water singing with ancient power as it filled their cups. Zeus's hand trembled as he raised the chalice to his lips. The memory struck him like a thunderbolt. He saw himself standing in Olympus's great hall, and Isidora before him. Her voice rang clear across time. The Titans are defeated, but at what cost? We've become what we fought against. And Isidora's healing light pierced the shadows of Zeus's reign, exposing the rot he'd let fester. In the memory, Zeus saw himself as he once was, fresh from his victory over Kronos, his heart still brimming with ideals. And Isidora had been there, her touch mending not just his wounds but his spirit. Together, they had dreamed of a new age, one where divine power served something greater than mere dominion. Her gift of healing had saved countless gods during the Titanomachy, yet now, that same compassion threatened everything he'd built. You swore we would rule differently. She pressed, her voice steady. That gods and mortals would stand as equals, that wisdom, not fear, would guide us. Zeus's fury swelled like a gathering storm. Equality. Mortals need a firm hand. The gods need order. Without it, chaos reigns. Then you've learned nothing. And Isidora shot back, unflinching. I helped you heal from the Titans' poison because I believed in your vision. But now I see. You've merely replaced their tyranny with your own. The memory shifted. Zeus watched himself strike her down, her form shattering like stained glass. But before she vanished, her power scattering to the winds, she whispered, "Remember me, when the weight of your crown becomes too heavy to bear." The vision twisted further, showing the aftermath of her banishment. Zeus saw his servants tear down her temples, erase her name from sacred texts, and scatter her followers to the winds. Each act of erasure felt like a fresh wound now, each memory a judgment against his reign. Fear had guided his hand, fear of change, fear of losing control, fear of facing his own failures. Athena's voice pulled him back to the present. "She was your conscience," she said softly. "And you destroyed her for it?" Zeus slumped, the truth laid bare. "I feared her power because she was right. What kind of king fears truth itself?" Hermes stepped forward, his usual mischief replaced by solemn understanding. "The mortals have a saying." He offered quietly, "The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable." He gestured to the pool, its waters still rippling with untold secrets. "Perhaps that's why we gods fear it so much." The waters of Mnemosine stirred again, revealing glimpses of what might have been, a different Olympus, where wisdom and healing walked hand in hand with power and authority, where gods and mortals grew together, not apart. Zeus saw his own face, not as the stern ruler he'd become, but as the leader he'd once promised to be. The vision lingered, showing more than possibilities. It revealed the cost of their current path. Zeus saw how each generation of mortals grew more distant from the gods, how faith turned to empty ritual, and how the divine spark in human hearts dimmed with each passing age. He stood among the remnants of Anizidora's followers, their once vibrant devotion now reduced to hushed prayers and hidden rituals. Though their whispers still reached Olympus, no one remained to answer them. Hera appeared beside him, her presence as sharp and cold as winter's breath. "A king who understands necessity," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "I'll give you one chance to preserve what we've built. Banish her spirit to the deepest pit of Tartarus, where even memory cannot follow." Thunder rumbled across the heavens, but this time, it wasn't Zeus's doing. The very essence of Olympus seemed to tremble, as if the world itself hesitated, torn between two paths. Hera's offer hung in the air like a poisoned chalice, a choice between the comfort of lies and the burden of truth. The ground beneath them shifted, ancient stones groaning under the weight of forgotten promises. In the distance, the spectral forms of the hollow pantheon stirred, their ghostly presence pressing against the edges of reality. They watched, silent and waiting, to see if another would join their ranks of the erased. "Think carefully," Hera urged, her voice heavy with the weight of centuries. "How many wars have we prevented? How many mortal civilizations have thrived under our rule? All of it built on order. Order that she would destroy." Zeus stared into the rippling surface of Mnemosine's pool, where memories of an Isidora played out like fragments of a dream. He saw her guiding them toward compassion instead of conquest, her gentle wisdom tempering his impulsive rage. Her healing touch had mended not just flesh but spirits, her presence a balm to the chaos of Olympus. Without her, the halls of the gods had grown cold, their marble walls echoing with commands instead of counsel. The choice before them wasn't just about one forgotten goddess. It was about the very nature of their power. Should it crush or nurture, command or commune? The answers lay in the depths of the pool, in the truths they had buried for so long. Hermes knelt beside the water, his fingers tracing its shimmering surface. "Perhaps," he murmured, "true strength lies not in what we can make others forget, but in what we dare to remember." Athena rose to her feet, her shield catching the light like a mirror of wisdom. "No," she said firmly. "We've hidden from the truth long enough. An Isidora returns, or we're no better than the titans we overthrew." The storm clouds gathered over Delphi, casting the sacred temple in an eerie twilight. Lightning arced between the ancient columns as Zeus, Athena, and Hermes formed a triangle around the central heart. The shard of an Isidora's shattered crown pulsed with growing power, its light flickering in time with the crackling energy in the air. The ritual demanded perfect timing, the moment when Apollo's chariot dipped below the horizon, leaving the world suspended between light and shadow. Athena had spent weeks poring over ancient texts, deciphering the precise steps required. The air was thick with anticipation, heavy with the weight of centuries of secrets. "The ritual requires sacrifice," Athena called over the howling wind. "Not of blood, but of power itself." Hermes glanced down at his caduceus, the symbol of his divine authority, and tightened his grip. Without hesitation, Hermes stepped forward. "My father taught me that power corrupts," he said, his voice steady. "Perhaps it's time I proved I learned that lesson." He placed his caduceus into the hearth's flames, watching as the sacred staff dissolved into shimmering energy. The storm outside roared louder, shaking the temple walls. Zeus stood frozen, his crown clutched tightly in his hand, as memories of his past decisions crashed over him like relentless waves. "If I do this," he murmured, "if I admit what I've done, everything changes." Images of the Titanomachy flooded his mind, an Isidora healing his wounds, standing beside him in battle, her wisdom guiding him through his darkest moments. The shame of his betrayal burned hotter than any lightning bolt he'd ever summoned. Power had twisted him, turning gratitude into fear, friendship into suspicion. The weight of millennia pressed down on his shoulders. Each flash of lightning illuminated another memory. How an Isidora had taught him to heal rather than destroy. How she'd shown him that true leadership meant serving others. He remembered her gentle rebuke when he'd first suggested erasing a minor deity who'd challenged him. "Power that needs to hide truth," she'd said, "is no power at all." How quickly he'd forgotten those words once she was gone. "Everything already has," Athena replied, her gray eyes reflecting the storm above. Zeus hesitated, then removed his crown and held it over the heart. "I choose truth over power," he declared. The crown fell, merging with Hermes' sacrifice. The temple floor cracked open, golden light pouring forth. From its depths rose an Isidora, not as the vengeful spirit they'd feared, but as fragments of memory given form. Her presence filled the temple like the first light of dawn after a long night. Her form shifted like sunlight dancing on water. Sometimes the warrior who fought beside Zeus, other times the healer who tended to gods and mortals alike. The temple walls seemed to breathe with her presence. Ancient stones remembering their original purpose. The air grew thick with divine energy as other forgotten deities stirred in response to her return. Whispers of ancient names echoed through the chamber. Minor gods of dewdrops and dawn mists, spirits of mountain paths and hidden springs. Each one a testament to the complexity Zeus had tried to simplify, the chaos he'd attempted to control. And Isidora's presence made space for them all, showing how diversity strengthened rather than weakened divine order. "You've changed," she said to Zeus, her voice echoing with the weight of ages. "Finally, you understand the price of progress." "What happens now?" Hermes asked, standing crownless but somehow taller, his usual mischief replaced by quiet resolve. And Isidora smiled, though her form flickered like candlelight. "I offer no vengeance, only choice. Olympus can face its shadows, learn from them, grow beyond them, or cling to comfortable lies and watch history repeat itself." The other gods gathered at the temple's threshold, drawn by the ritual's power. Hera stood among them, her expression unreadable as she watched her husband face his past. Apollo and Artemis lowered their weapons, their faces softening as they realized the threat they feared had never existed. Even the fates paused in their eternal weaving, their hands stilling as they sensed the threads of destiny shifting. Persephone emerged from the shadows, the pomegranate seed she'd given them glinting faintly in her palm. "The underworld remembers what Olympus tries to forget," she said, her voice steady but laced with quiet defiance. "Perhaps it's time we learned from both realms." Her words carried the weight of someone who had walked between worlds. Finding strength in both darkness and light, the gathered gods murmured in agreement, their voices a mix of awe and unease. Zeus stepped forward, his thunderous presence softened by the gravity of the moment. "The archives, the histories, they belong to Athena now. Let wisdom guide us, not fear." Hermes let out a laugh, sharp and relieved, his usual mischief tempered by something deeper. "And I'll carry lost truths instead of just messages. Seems a fair trade to me." In the days that followed, Isidora's temple rose once more, its stones echoing with the whispers of a goddess who was more memory than flesh. She lingered as a presence, a breath of wind, a ripple in still water, her story no longer a cautionary tale, but a testament to the possibility of change. Even among the gods, the fates themselves seemed transformed, their weaving now intricate with threads they had long ignored. "Destiny is not a chain," they declared, their voices harmonizing like a song. "It is a tapestry, richer with every voice added to its making." Even they, who had witnessed the rise and fall of ages, found themselves learning anew. The changes rippled through Olympus like waves across a once still pond. Hera, ever guarded, began to share her own secrets, speaking of ancient wounds and hidden fears. The younger gods sought out forgotten stories, eager to learn from the past rather than repeat its mistakes. Hermes carved new paths between the mortal and divine realms, ensuring that no voice, no matter how faint, would go unheard. Seasons turned, and the divine court, once rigid with tradition, began to hum with voices from every corner of creation. Even the smallest nature spirits found the courage to speak, their truths carried on the wind, alongside the songs of nymphs and the whispers of ancient wisdom. Mortals and immortals alike flocked to Isidora's temple, not seeking power or glory, but understanding. And high above, in the heart of Olympus, Zeus kept a single shard of Isidora's crown, not as a trophy but as a reminder. True strength, he had learned, lay not in perfect memory, but in the courage to face what we would rather forget.